We have like probably 60 accounts from academic journals, reported by archaeologists, reported by universities, even presented and displayed at universities. Even in the Smithsonian's own annual reports, there's 17 accounts of 7 to 8 foot tall skeletons being found.
7 to 8 foot, though, that's not like...
That's not huge.
That could be easily explainable with some of like the gigantism things that people have to do. There's people in the NBA who are 7 to 8 foot tall.
That's true, but none of them had gigantism. That's the thing. None of them. They're all perfectly formed, and it was just normal, that height. That was the normal height.
Praveen Mohan, when he was on the podcast, he was showing us articles that were from the New York Times from the like early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, of I think it was like 15 to 18 foot giants.
You do get a few reports like that. Yeah, we've got a few in our accounts.
In the New York Times, of all places. Oh
yeah, I mean our book is like, there's so many accounts in proper newspapers. Not just some fly-by-night publications like Washington Times, all that kind of thing, Washington Post and all that. Even in Britain as well, we have the same thing. It's all over the world really, but there's little evidence. It's all vanished.
Right.
Very little, especially here, especially with Nagpra. So you got nothing left to really kind of prove a point.
So maybe this is a good opportunity to give your explain to people what your background is and how you got into all this stuff.
Okay, cool.
Who are you?
Yeah. Who am I?
Who the hell are you? Hugh Newman?
My name's Hugh Newman. I'm a researcher, author, explorer from England. I live right near Stonehenge in Wiltshire, which is a very interesting, scary place to live in some cases.
Why is it scary?
And well, we live next door to a burial mound. Okay, you get them there as well, not just North America. We live next to 7 burial mounds, in fact, and we have weird activity, paranormal stuff going on in our house. It's pretty freaky, yeah. But my main area of research really is away from there. I mean, I've been focused on Britain for a long time, but actually I'm fascinated by what's going on in southeast Turkey. That's where it's all happening. I mean, you got Karahan Tepe, you got Göbekli Tepe, Saybert. You got like dozens of sites now are being reported over there that go back nearly 12,000 years. So that's where I'm focused on now. That's my kind of, I got my little book out. I got a bigger book coming out with my partner JJ Ainsworth.
This is your little book?
That's the little book, yeah.
Gorgeous little book.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe.
It's even got the foil to the letter, so it's holographic.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
Very pretty. It's adorable.
Adorable little wooden book. Yeah, it's one of a series that the publisher puts out. So, but we're working on a bigger book with my partner JJ Ainsworth, going deeper into the whole story of what is known now as the Taztepeler culture, which means stone hills in kind of, translated from Turkish, but actually it's more like sacred stone hills, like the sacred burial, or sacred areas where these structures and, complexes were being built over in southeast Turkey, all around the city of Şanlıurfa. That's pretty much where it's all happening.
Have you actually been to Göbekli Tepe?
I've been many times.
Really?
Yeah. I've been going for like 10 or 11 years. I've been there. Yeah, I mean, it's been known since about 2000, but it was really started to be excavated in the mid 1990s. But it was actually kind of partly discovered in 1963, by some American archaeologists. But they didn't recognize for what it was, so they didn't really dig there.
So what do you think it was?
Göbekli Tepe itself is a major megalithic complex. I mean, I believe that it was like a whole kind of change in consciousness was taking place at the end of the last ice age, because this was within 200 years of the Younger Dryas kind of ending. So the weather had improved. It feels like groups coming in from the south and the Tufians. You've got groups coming in from the north and coming in through Anatolia, all kind of met and kind of like decided things had changed now. We're gonna monumentalize what we know and put it into stone, and they did it in a profound, innovative manner. It was unbelievable, because this is like, you look at the stone circles in Britain. they're the kind of rough-hewn stones mostly, just placed in circles or different, slightly different geometries. Here they were doing that to another level. They were carving every stone precisely, beautifully, with 3D reliefs on them, with abstract symbols, abstract human forms, anthropomorphic figures.
They have fingers on them.
Fingers, yeah, belts.
Little bags.
That's right, yeah, and strange V-necks with almost like pendants as well. It's just out there. I mean, it's like it seems like it must have come from somewhere, this remarkable kind of culture. I call it like the world's first super civilization, because there's actually they now think, although they say there's officially 12 sites, which include Karahan Tepe, Saybirch, and all these others, they're now saying there could be 38 sites. But then another one of the archaeologists said there could be nearly 100 going in this whole area across southeast Turkey.
Based on what? What makes them think there could be 100?
Well, they keep finding all these surface artifacts, because most of these sites appear to be buried at the end.
Can't they use LiDAR?
I think they have done, yeah. I think they have done, but it's mainly kind of rocky terrain. So I think it's harder to get LiDAR penetrating. I think you can get it through trees and see what's on the surface.
But not
so much
dirt.
Just dirt and rock is a bit troublesome, I think. I think they've done GPR of a lot of places now, though. So they're going to get it. That's what they do.
Ground penetrating radar?
Yeah. So they kind of work out what's going on beneath there to see if it's worth investigating.
Now, what is the modern consensus of when it was constructed, the Göbekli Tepe T-pillars?
Gobekli Tepe officially dates to 9,600 BC, or 11,600 years ago. That's the earliest date, although it stretches, according to the date.
That's the earliest.
Earliest, but that's currently, because only like a small percentage has been actually uncovered so far. So there's actually, 5 to 7, maybe 8% has been uncovered.
Right, because my understanding of it was that it was intentionally buried to preserve it from some sort of cataclysm, meaning that it could have been constructed before some big cataclysm or some big flood, if the Younger Dryas was really what people think it is.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it being deliberately buried, that's been kind of challenged, actually, because that's what Klaus Schmidt, he was the main archaeologist, the original head archaeologist there, along with another guy as well, Hauptmann he was called, and he proposed that it was deliberately buried. And this is a tradition you find in that part of the world, where they bury sites at the end of their use. So they used them for 1,000 or 2,000 years. But recent research done by the archaeologists there, they found that the enclosures that have been uncovered, or excavated, there's been like some kind of slope slide, kind of where the debris has fallen down into it over years and years and years. Middens and rubbish and other things build up, and some of it kind of filled in, some of it like that. But then it's pretty much now believed that some of it was then buried afterwards, because there's obvious repair work done. They've repaired it, put stuff back in place, and like put everything where it should be, even artifacts and statues and things like this, and then it's kind of covered over. And so I don't see how a slope slide would not just knock things out of place, so it seems like there's a bit of both, a bit of slope slide and a bit of burying. But Karahan Tepe, that was deliberately buried. They've proven that now.
Oh, they've proven it was deliberately.
Yeah,
because Karahan Tepe, the one that Ben Van Kirkwood was showing me, where it looked like they performed lots of human sacrifices there.
Sacrifices? My God, really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
No?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
He was showing me a place in Turkey, because he recently went to Turkey, and he was saying
Yeah,
my audio sounds really weird. Do you hear that, Steve? Is it just me?
It's just your sexy voice, man.
It's just in my head, huh? All right.
Well, here we've got Karahan Tepe. Yeah, these are the.
This is Karahan Tepe. Okay, he was showing me one site in Turkey, maybe that one down below. On the bottom, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That looked like there was a place where they would cut people's heads off and the blood would like flow through like a little...
Yeah, you got a channel, actually, yeah.
A channel, yeah, for blood.
Next to the one on the left there, next to what's called the Pillar Shrine or Structure AB, where you've got like, these... It's carved out of bedrock, that, by the way, completely carved out of bedrock. Yeah, and apart from only one of them is a freestanding pillar. The rest of these phallic-shaped pillars are carved from bedrock. But there's a channel leading into it. So some people have suggested it's either for water, it's for sacrifice. I mean, they found there's a site called Cheanu, which is near Diyarbakir, which is further north. It dates to around 8,400 BC, where they think they've actually found human hemoglobin and animal blood, particles on top of this slab, which looks like a sacrificial slab.
Right.
So some people are saying
that's what Ben was showing me.
It could be for that. Some people are saying it's going on here as well, but there's no real evidence of exactly what they were doing, but you never know. It could have been some weird dark stuff they were up to for sure, but there's certainly something special going on, especially because it's so old. I mean this is like 6,000 or 7,000 years before Stonehenge, like same, it's old, it's that age difference with the pyramids as well. And yet the
Stonehenge was supposedly when?
Earliest phase officially around 2,500 to 3,000 BC.
So around the same time as the pyramids, thing.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there are some older elements in the area around Stonehenge, like Blickmead and the wooden post holes. They go back 10,000 years, but they're not megalithic construction. But yeah, this pillar shrine thing is really interesting. I mean, it's quite bizarre. It's got like a porthole stone carved out of the bedrock, almost like a hole going through to the main enclosure, which is this 75-foot wide enclosure, like a stone circle, but it's more kind of elliptical shape. It's actually a very specific geometry. And actually, yeah, down there, that image there, that's a pretty good one. You got various ones. Not that one. There's one with the pillar shrine. Yeah, if you actually type in Karahan Tepe winter solstice, that'll come up with our article we did, and it shows some good images. But you see on the this is our stuff here. So we found this weird alignment on the winter solstice. Myself and JJ Ainsworth. That's the article. Yeah, the first one we did, and we accidentally turned up there. We got kind of in a little bit of trouble. We had to go the next morning because officials were going to come in and throw us out, possibly arrest us, and this, that, and the other. And so we had to go the first thing in the morning on the 20th December 2021. And you can see, if you go to the top of that page, you can see that this blade of light, kind of, or a bit further down, this blade of light kind of was hitting the face. This head, you see, this head's coming out of the side.
What is that?
It's like carved out of the bedrock. This head with this serpentine neck with a V-neck thing.
Where is it?
It's just on the right there. If you go down a bit, you can see some other images.
What is that line going through this diagonally?
That's where the winter solstice sunrise hits the head.
Okay, so you're just sort of illustrating like where it shines.
Yeah. Through. If you go down a bit, you can actually see a couple more images. Hopefully they're on there. It should be. And maybe it's in the video. Oh, that's where it goes through the main enclosure. Yeah, and then goes through that little hole, and this is perfectly winter solstice.
Weird.
It's perfectly winter solstice, and it hits this head, and there's light. That's it there, and so the light moves around. It hits the head, then moves around the head for 45 minutes. So it's perfect.
Really?
It's perfectly aligned to the winter solstice. It's pretty crazy, and so that kind of blew our minds because that proves they had an understanding of solar astronomy nearly 12,000 years ago, or at least 11,400 years ago, which is the age of Karahan Tepe. And so and the fact you can go there now and you can see it on the winter solstice. It happens. You can watch the light move around the head, like from here, this side of the head, all the way around here, and it's pretty epic. We've actually got time lapses of it and things like this, and so that proves there's a sophistication about these sites and there's astronomy related to these sites. And that's kind of what the head looks like after it's fully illuminated.
Wow.
But it's pretty weird. I mean that's 3 times the size of a human head, carved out of bedrock. It's got like a flat top. It's got an open mouth, and the eyes. This was actually
like straight.
Well, no, apparently, because Graham Hancock and Neshmi Corral, who's the head archaeologist, went in the pillar shrine, where structure AB here, when they were filming the first series of Ancient Apocalypse. Looked carefully at it and noticed that the eyes were looking to the right. His right, towards the whole stone where the winter solstice comes in, even though the head faces roughly east.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can't really see it clearly on here, but they said they went in there and actually saw that. So yeah, so we've got this winter solstice thing going on here, which is bizarre, but then that suggests if they were doing that then they must have known about it long before then. They must have developed it and built the site, because the head, the whole pillar shrine, and the whole stone are bedrock. They're carved out of bedrock, so it's a permanent fixture. They're not stones that could be moved, so they must have been doing it for a long time before they even started building the site. They sort of build up to it. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty compelling. I mean, then you've got possible alignments like this at Göbekli Tepe, and as more gets excavated, there's going to be a whole bunch more of these kind of things coming out of this part of the world. So there's a lot to consider when you're like looking at these sites.
What is that bedrock? How hard is bedrock?
Well, this is limestone.
It's limestone. Okay, gotcha.
I mean, it's not it's not super tough, but it's still you got to work at it. It's not like easy, that's for sure. Plus, Gobekli Tepe, they were carving out these beautiful 18-foot tall T-shaped pillars and then moving them half a mile. Some of them weighing up to like 20, 25 tons maybe. But then they carved it so the lower section, the tall section, and then they have a top section which looks like it's separate, but it's not. It's the same stone on top with a no face on it. It's like a no face on it, but it's supposed to represent a head because you've got the arms coming down the side,
right,
with hands across the navel coming around the front, belts around it with like fox pelts underneath it and things like this. So there's like the intricacy and the abstract nature of the artwork really shouldn't have exist back then. I mean, it just shouldn't have been. I mean, there is a build-up. You can see Natufian sites down south in Syria and places like this, which show geometry, which show a bit of astronomy, which show stonework, but nothing like this. I mean, this just went bang when Göbekli Tepe was being built, and then this came pretty soon after.
Now, how far is Karahan Tepe from Göbekli Tepe?
It's about 20 to 25 miles southeast from that area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you got like a kind of a 3D scan of it. That's my buddy did some drone stuff there. And they made a 3D scan.
Holy shit, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, this a lot more has been excavated since this. This was done in 2021.
I'm not George Costanza, and I don't want a wallet that feels like I'm smuggling a potato. Sitting on a rock doesn't appeal to me. I purchased this Ridge wallet right here years ago, way before they sponsored the show, and I can tell you it's slim, compact, and I don't even feel it. Ridge wallet holds up to 12 cards plus cash, and it stays sleek, slim, and modern. No more potato pockets, and it's made from premium materials like aluminum, titanium, and carbon fiber. Basically, if Iron Man had a wallet, this is what it would be. Between its slim design and premium build, this is why I love Ridge. And it's a huge bonus that it blocks RFID devices, which makes my travel worry-free from digital pickpockets. If you want it custom, Ridge has over 50 colors and styles to match your vibe. And the best part, a lifetime warranty means if anything happens, Ridge has your back forever. And if you tend to misplace things, the Ridge AirTag attachment helps you track it before full panic mode sets in. And Ridge isn't just about wallets. They make premium everyday carry gear like key cases, suitcases, and rings, all built with the same sleek, durable design. And with over 100,000 5-star reviews, that many people can't be wrong. Upgrade your wallet at ridge.com and your pockets will thank you. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off at Ridge by using my code Danny Jones at checkout. Just head on over to ridge.com and use the code DANNYJONES and you're all set. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them, and please support the show by telling them that we sent you. It's linked down below. Now back to the show. Wow, look at that, dude.
Yeah, and so this one at the front here, that's called structure AA. That's called what we call the pit shrine. You got the path going up there, and then behind that you got the pillar shrine, structure AB. Then the big structure, the big kind of stone circle structure, structure AD. But on the right hand side of that big structure, where your cursor is now, that's carved out of bedrock. So some of the T-shaped pillars and benches are carved out of the bedrock on the right-hand side, the kind of western side of it. And whereas the rest is, got freestanding pillars carved and then placed there. So look at that. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Have you ever seen the Kailasa temple in India?
I have, yeah. I've been up there once, yeah.
That whole thing was carved out of bedrock as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it was limestone. I think it was even harder than that.
It was, yes. That's insane, that place. That's like a wonder of the world, that place.
It is unbelievable. Totally insane.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I went there in February.
It's like a cathedral carved out of the side of a mountain.
And apparently it's like it's almost like they come in from the top, had a clear design in their head and just gone down like this. And somehow, I mean...
And how do they know they weren't going to encounter any sort of cavities or cracks or... inconsistencies in the stone material that was beneath them, and then the level of planning that had to be done to create that is insane. It's huge.
I know. It's
massive. It's like 5 stories or something.
But that's it. I mean, the thing about the Kailasa temple, I mean, that's one of about 30 or 40 temples at this one site, which I didn't realize when I got there. I had a day there and it was not enough. And I spent my whole time there, and maybe one other temple. I mean, I'm sure Praveen talked about this. Yeah, man.
Have you been there?
I have been there. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, and it really got me. I mean, I was like, whoa, this is like much bigger, much more intricate than I realized.
When did they say that was built? When is the like accepted date for that?
For the Kayla, I think it's only like about 1,000 years ago or something, or less.
Really?
Officially, but Praveen doesn't think so. He thinks it's much older. I mean, now they found sites like this. They found Karahan Tepe. Everything is going to should be looked at again. You know, there needs to be another look at the dating of these sites around the world, because if they were doing this then, I mean, what the hell? I mean,
how do you think they carved all this? What kind of tools were they using?
Well, officially they were using like antler picks. They were kind of using slightly harder stones like basalt. Yeah. And for the fine stone work, they were using obsidian for like the precise detail. Things like this. There's obviously no metal back then. Although at Chayanu and one other site, they found copper, but it was beaten copper. It wasn't like heated up copper. They weren't smelting or anything like this. But but the oldest worked copper in the world was found at one of the sister sites to Karahan Tepe. It's like called Chayanu.
And then what exactly here did they use to carbon date?
Here, I think they've just used materials they found at the very lowest levels. Right. I think they found burnt wood, burnt grains. I think mainly burnt wood, especially at Gobekli Tepe. But even at Gobekli Tepe, the problem they got there is that they're choosing stuff that's in the bottom of the walls that are placed in between the outside pillars around the circle. But these walls could have been added later. That's the problem. So because you can't, as soon as you get down to the bedrock, you can't go any further. You can't get anything below the bedrock. So they were using stuff on top of the bedrock in the walls, which could have been added later. And I think they were, because I think that they were just utilizing bedrock initially, and the temples were like, they were slotting kind of the megaliths into like little sockets in the bedrock, like within steps and curbs, which you can see around the site.
It's interesting the way they build the walls by stacking all those little rocks together.
Yeah, I mean, they are probably later. I mean, that's the thing. They are probably later. I mean, because you can see the sophistication is a whole different level. Here, you can't, it's different. I mean, there's so much. I think with Karahan Tepe, it was kind of deliberately damaged before it was buried. It was like decommissioned, by the builders or by the people who were living there at the time.
Really?
Then it got buried. And whereas Göbekli Tepe, it doesn't seem to have been deliberately damaged. It was like, it was preserved almost. It was like almost rebuilt. It was, repaired and then put back in place. And then they kind of finished the burial there. Right. After the slope slide had happened previously. Whereas here, it looks like stuff's been knocked about, things like this. So yeah, it's a slight problem when you're kind of looking at this site. But yeah, there's a whole load of stuff here. I mean, even some of the floors of the new enclosures, they are made. They're not. Sometimes they're carved flat bedrock. I mean, it's perfectly level as well. I mean, perfectly level. But sometimes they use terrazzo, which is like this lime cement.
Terrazzo?
Yeah. And so they were actually,
really,
because officially the Romans only used, the first people invented it officially. Yeah. But they found it in use in abundance here. I mean, serious abundance. I mean, hundreds of square meters of terrazzo is being used. And so what that means is they were heating up limestone up to 850 degrees somehow. And then it would turn into this more powdery form, which they could then use, which is quite toxic kind of whole process.
That melts limestone?
Well, it breaks it down, yeah. And then they mix it with water and mud and other things.
What would be the temperature to melt down or smelt copper?
Yeah, I'm not sure about copper, but I think it's probably less than that, I would imagine.
Less than that, huh?
Yeah. But when it comes to creating, oh my god,
1900 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty hot. But they were making this cement basically, and it was waterproof. It was like this perfect kind of. So they were filling in gaps. They were making floors.
Wow.
They were doing this whole thing with it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Type in limestone melting point.
Yeah, if you put in terrazzo.
1500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah, that's 825
Celsius. That's 825 Celsius.
Yeah. So that would be that's how you make the kind of you break it down.
So a little bit hotter for copper.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So they had all these kind of innovations and technologies happening in this part of the world, which really all developed here. This is like loads of inventions, loads of innovations that the world first ever saw were at these sites.
Have you ever been to Egypt?
Yes. Yes, I've been to Egypt.
You've been inside the Great Pyramid and all that?
Yeah, that's a whole different level. That is insane.
Yeah.
When you come to stonework and technologies.
Right.
My goodness. Yeah, you got like, is this one of the Egyptian?
Yeah, that's one of the 3D prints.
Yeah. God, I mean, you got stuff like this going on, but actually, you've got these plates. If you want to have a look, there's these ones from Karahan Tepe, these stone plates. If you want to type in Karahan Tepe stone plates, these are insane as well. And so, not quite the level of these vases or vases, I think you call, but here we go. Yeah, you can see some of them there. So these have been found, and yeah, these stone plates are like 2 or 3 feet wide, sometimes 4 feet wide max.
Yeah, I think I have seen
these.
These
are carved from basalt and granite and other such
That's all
things.
we got.
I've actually got some better images than this in one of my articles.
There you go.
Up online somewhere.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's them. That's them there, basically. Yeah. That's probably my photo. I'm not sure, but that's So these were deliberately broken as well at the end of their use, and then placed on the benches around the edge of Karahan Tepe. And again, but these are like 11,400 years old, so considerably older than the ones in Egypt.
Wow.
But some of them are extremely hard stone and very well made. And even that one on the right, it's got almost like a kind of cut mark, like a little kind of indentation, a perfectly circular indentation, smoothed out of the middle, exactly in the middle.
It's so bizarre, man.
And there were hundreds of these potentially. Yeah, they found a whole kind of a cache of them in a new area of Karahan Tepe that they call in the kitchen, because they believe they were preparing food there. But in this kitchen that they found, they're actually they found quite a lot of Anatolian viper snake skeletons.
Oh yeah.
So
snake skeletons.
So if they don't mention that in the reports, but they were found there, and so they were either eating snakes, which is weird, or they were getting the venom out of the snakes for psychotropic purposes. So we believe it's more. This is it actually. This is like the alchemical kitchen, we call it. That's the image there. Yeah. That's been published.
Click on that.
You can see the image. There you go. Yeah.
11,000-year-old kitchen, stone vessels and plates discovered in Karahan Tepe.
Yeah, so this is
interesting.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. So there's a serious amount of things they were doing there. I mean, this was like a kind of, and they weren't making any pottery. This is all what's called the pre-pottery Neolithic era. So there was no pottery. Everything was made of stone, pretty much, apart from the terrazzo, and the limestone plaster that they were using.
This thing right there, is that a stone vase?
That'll all be stone. Yeah, everything.
Holy shit!
So that would have had to be carved. That wasn't clay, or that wasn't. They
didn't do any pottery,
cast or anything.
No, nothing like that back then. The only thing they were doing was the terrazzo, and also similar to terrazzo, they were making limestone kind of plaster, covering up some of the walls and things like this, and but not actual vessels.
Yeah, that pot looks pretty symmetrical. That pot looks like pretty damn close to perfect. That's full of dirt right there.
Some of them are in really.
It looks even more circular than the actual plates themselves.
Well, look at these. I mean, these are in good condition, actually, some of these. They're not broken. I mean, hopefully we'll get scans of these. That'd be kind of useful. So you can check out the accuracy. But I don't think it's quite the level of what they were doing in Egypt. That's ridiculous.
Look at those other ones too, bro.
Yeah, they're not small either. They're pretty epic.
Wow.
Some have beautiful carvings on as well. You can actually see the carvings all around, beautiful kind of chevrons, abstract figures, animals, and things like this. It's pretty crazy. I mean, but I think that they were they were into the Anatolian viper venom and kind of.
Well, I think that part of the world snakes were a big problem for people. Likely, I know in the classical area, a lot of people died from snakes. Snakes were a real problem. Yeah, and they had to figure out anti-venoms and antibody treatments to help people survive snake bites, and people were also consuming viper flesh.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many serpent carvings at these sites in Southeast Turkey. It's insane.
Yeah, that too.
A lot. I mean, a lot of serpents. I mean, serious amount. And so, and there's lots of other animals and creatures, leopards, boars, other such things.
Oh, look, there's Graham standing next to the head. Oh, that gives you a good scale of it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, it's bigger than you think.
Holy cow, that thing's big.
Yeah, it looks bigger than it. That looks too big there. That's
a little bit bigger than a human head, huh?
Well, it's supposed to be 3 or 4.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that is pretty epic. But yeah, and it's just tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more being discovered. If you do that, if you put in the Karahan Tepe new discoveries, it might come up with what's being discovered on the top of the hill, because they've discovered this 7.5 foot statue. Actually, yeah, you can see it there if you go to the middle ancient origins one.
Ladies and gents, the day has finally come where you can use the power of red light to regrow your hair. And you can save some serious cash by using our exclusive code. The iRestore Elite is clinically proven to help regrow hair using 300 lasers and 200 LEDs that send light therapy directly to your scalp. Just pop it on while you're watching TV or reading your book and enjoy the benefits. It's a system with proven results. In a double-blind clinical study, nearly every participant saw an increase in their hair growth with this technology. The iRestore Elite uses VIXO lasers that feature wider beams of red light, which gives consistent coverage and results. Their unique use of optimal wavelengths reactivates dormant follicles to restore your natural hair. Lasers provide deeper spot stimulation, while LEDs provide broader uniform coverage to fill in the gaps in between the lasers. Plus, they offer a money-back guarantee so you can get it risk-free. It's comfortable, it's lightweight, it looks badass like Tron, and I don't feel silly when I'm using it. I often get compliments and people want to know where I got it so they can grow their hair. Plus, I've been learning a ton about the benefits of red light and near-infrared light recently, so that gives me a huge confidence boost that this stuff really works. And if you really want to get the maximum out of your iRestore Elite, bundle with the Revive Max Growth Kit, which has a bunch of hair products that works with the wavelengths of the Elite. Give yourself the gift of hair confidence this spring. For a limited time only, our listeners are getting a huge discount on their iRestore Elite when you use the code DANNY at iRestore.com. Head on over to the letter IRESTORE.com and use the code DANNY, DANNY, for my exclusive discount on the iRestore Elite. Please support our show by telling them we sent you. Hair loss is frustrating, and now you don't have to fight it alone thanks to the iRestore. It's linked below. Now back to the show.
I think that's my article, and that they found this 7.5 foot statue is sitting down kind of on the bench. This is the Karahan Tepe, the one on the right there, and he's holding his phallus, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
and he's clearly got this kind of emaciation thing going on with the kind of neck. You see the V thing on his neck and the ribs.
Yeah.
And so he's also got a weird beard. He's got almost like one of them fake Egyptian beards.
Yeah.
And his haircut is almost like a mullet going down the back, but shaved above the ears. And we've seen other Mohican type haircuts carved in stone there as well. I mean, which is pretty bizarre. And next,
do we know this was carved around the same time?
Yeah, I mean, they think it was pretty much the same time. They're actually saying it might be a fraction younger, a few hundred years younger.
Right.
But we're not so sure. And also there was like a vulture statue was found there, and giant T-shaped pillars, again, all mainly broken. I mean, again, even this statue was broken in like 3 parts.
Right, yeah, you can see that.
You can see this deliberate kind of breakage. I mean, and some of the other human statues they found previously, again, they're broken. So it's kind of, is it a sort of ceremonial breaking of the statues? This is what some people have suggested. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to this culture.
Or it could be competing cultures or tribes coming to destroy them, similar to what happened with the Kailasa temple.
Yeah, well, they tried to destroy that and failed pretty miserably.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job destroying some of the stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of the Indian stuff was pretty. A lot of the famous Indian sites were ravaged.
Yeah,
by the Middle Eastern cultures. The Islam.
I guess it could be like the way.
Islamists.
Yeah, you get like in Egypt, you get like the kind of statues, like the nose is broken off and things like this, which is takes away their power and other such things. So there could be a similar principle at play here. There are traditions in some areas in this part of the world where you to decommission and close down a site when you've finished with it, you do break things in certain ways, kind of carefully, and then bury it. this is kind of one of the things. So we don't know. It could be one or both of these different perspectives.
Yeah. Just the comparison from this to some of the shit you see in Egypt is mind-bending. And some of those places that are in Egypt with those perfectly symmetrical granite statues of those pharaohs is just mind-bending, man.
Yeah, that kind of thing's a whole different level. It's like almost like computer design technology. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, I'm a big fan of Chris Dunn and what he's done in the past. I mean, it's just blown my mind. It's all these different ideas, but his thing about the precision and the symmetry kind of gets me, because it's just the symmetry is really hard to duplicate. It's
hard to ignore
when it's that good, that precise. But there's a lot of elements here of extremely sophisticated geometry within some of the sites. I mean, not necessarily the symmetry within statues, but the layout of the sites are very specific geometries. I mean, I don't know if you'll be able to find it on here.
How so?
Well, I don't know, maybe if you type in Göbekli Tepe, you might have to go to one of my videos, actually, I think. I'm not sure. Karahan Tepe or Göbekli Tepe geometry. See what comes up. I don't know if any of my images will come up. So you've got some geometry work that's been done by some archaeologists, but there's other stuff that I've done myself, which none of these ones, unfortunately.
Oh, look at that.
No, that's not. Don't go there. That's not.
Is that fake news?
That's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at that. No, you might have to go to one of my. If you go to the maybe go to the Megalithomania, you'll be able to find it there. Megalithomania YouTube or something. Okay. But there, so you got this in Britain. You've got these stone circles. You've got like 1,000 stone circles being reported across the whole country, going into France, other places as well. Yeah. And the YouTube channel, go to the home and then go to the YouTube channel. That's it. In fact, it's in the book. I could just, it's in the little book as well, some of the geometry.
You'll find it on here.
Yeah. And so you got all these certain geometries that were analysed, they were surveyed by a Scottish engineer from Oxford University called Alexander Thom. And he published this in several books, 2 or 3 really profound books, and caused a massive stir within the establishment, because he proved that the Neolithic people had an understanding of sophisticated geometries. If you go to the top, in fact, you go to the latest one, the one on the top left. And if you skip through that, you'll find the geometries there for sure. There you go. If you just sort of play it from there, you just turn the volume down, and I can explain a couple of things. This is the geometry on the left. That was discovered by Avi Gopher, where they found the centres of the circles, or their kind of geometries, were created a perfect equilateral triangle. And then then this was analysed by my friend Adam Tetlow, who's a metrologist. If you want to just play it and go through the next few slides, he found that they were using very specific types of ancient measurements. So looking at ancient metrology, like the Sumerian foot, the Sumerian palm, the Royal Egyptian cubit. There's me doing some kind of lecture, a conference, and we've got them all here. And he worked out that they were using the Persian foot as well, which these are all very important measurements. You've even got the Egyptian foot, and the cubit's also being found in some of the sites. And these are the same kind of measurements we find in the British stone circles and in the pyramids being found at Göbekli Tepe. But the geometries, if you move on a little bit, come on to that. Go to the next couple of slides. They found that it's also perfectly north-south. This is the work. So it was built with the understanding of north and south, which they thought maybe was only the pyramids. They found that, but actually they now found it at Göbekli Tepe. This is the work of Howard Crowhurst. These are the geometries we find all across the British Isles. We find these 6 to 8 different types, including the ellipse. Right. And they have different construction ways of doing it. They're called flattened eggs. They're called flattened circles, egg-shaped circles, things like this. So I applied this to Göbekli Tepe to see what I could find. That'll probably be the next couple of slides. Yeah, so here, this is like enclosure D, and we've got an egg-shaped circle type 1. Now, you get different, it might look like it's a bit off, but it's actually, you get different widths, heights on there of these different geometries. And if we just keep going on, there's a few other geometries we can look at. And you see these in British stone circles, you see them in Brittany and France. But the fact is you're finding them now in Göbekli Tepe, which is 6,000 years earlier at least.
Right.
Which is pretty amazing. And then even in Nabta Playa in Egypt, we have the same geometry going back nearly around 7,000 BC.
Conventional archaeologists, they're not mad about this, right? They're pretty in line with all this stuff, right? They accept it.
No, not at all. No,
they
no.
don't.
No,
really?
They're not interested.
I thought it was a conventional archaeologist who discovered it.
They discovered the equilateral triangle. That was all. Yeah, and
I mean, I'm talking about Gobekli Tepe.
But this one here
dated it.
Yeah, no, they're not interested for sure at the site. This one's the most fascinating one. This is a flattened circle modified type B, and it almost perfectly fits enclosure C. Precisely, and you can, even the construction points where the C is, that is actually where the T pillars are, and so this is exactly. I mean, this may not, for those that have an understanding of British stone circles and get all the different Alexander Thom's work and the people like Robin Heath. Mm-hmm. This is pretty compelling because this was supposed to only have occurred in Britain, like 4,000 years ago at the most, or 5,000 years ago perhaps. But here it was happening nearly 12,000 years ago. So what is going on? Did these influence the British stone circle builders with their ideas and their different geometries, their different kind of principles? If you want to go on a little bit further, I mean, what I found here is that the measurements as well, this is what really gets me, the ancient metrology of these sites. I mean, people have done a whole thing on the pyramids, or Stonehenge. They found what's called the megalithic yard, which is 2.72 feet. Or it's 0.83 meters. Mm-hmm. That's found all across the British sites. This is something that Alexander Thom worked out. But there's actually an old canon of measurements, which are in the next few slides, where there's actually multiple different measurements that you can get. Here we have some of my crazy.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, this is what I put together. I managed to work out the measurements of Göbekli Tepe. So this is like a work in progress, so I'm still working on this.
Yeah.
But what we found is like if you find whole number measurements of different ancient measurement systems, they were probably using them. It's highly likely they were using them or something close to them. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at ancient sites and trying to understand the nature of, what measurements they were using, you're not always looking for one single measurement. People think, they only use one measurement. I mean, there's archaeologists at Stonehenge who claim there's only one measurement they use, but it's not how it worked. People like John Michell and John Neal, who are kind of my mentors for many years, who proved that there was a system of different lengths of the foot. There's probably a slide on it in a minute on here as well. Different lengths of the foot. So you got the British foot, then you got like the Persian foot, you've got the Sumerian foot, you've got the Assyrian foot, you've got the Saxon foot, you've got all these different foot lengths, probably 12, 15 of them. But they're all perfect fractions, harmonics away from the British foot, going a bit longer or a bit shorter. And so how are they related to like the royal cubits and all that stuff the Romans were using? It all fits in. I mean, you can see on here, look, you see the royal cubit is the diagonal of a square, and if you put a double square together, you got the megalithic yard is the diagonal of two squares. Things like this, and then the remen is one length of it. So everything fits in a really profound, weird manner. And so what we realized, and what John Michell and John Neal realized, is that you're not looking for one measurement. You're looking for a canon of measurements, maybe 12, 15 different measurements, but they all relate to each other by perfect harmonies. So it's almost like music. And so you often find in ancient sites, if you look carefully, 4 or 5 different measurements because they wanted to apply the principles. It's almost like the languages or like the accents of that culture who was involved in building it. So it gets complicated, but really this was the elites were doing this, that the commoners weren't doing this. You didn't get the people hanging around, the tribes doing the work. There was elite people who had these understandings. And what gets even weirder is that most of these measurements are derived from the size of the earth. So that means they must have had an understanding of the size and shape of the earth going back nearly 12,000 years. And this backs up what Graham Hancock's been saying for years, that these old maps proved that they surveyed the earth in antiquity. And so this is how weird it gets when you start getting into it, because these measurements aren't arbitrary. They're not just made up. they're derived from measurements of the Earth, fractions of the degree at certain latitudes and things like this. So it's quite hard to get your head around without having it fully visualized and shown. But this is what they were doing, and so there's a high chance.
How do you think they knew the exact circumference of the Earth?
I think they were measuring. I think they had measurement. They had people going out to different latitudes, taking different measurements, using astronomy to do so, using shadows at certain times of the day and year. And then, marking that at different latitudes, and then you could work out the angles of the shadows and things like this. It was known they were doing that in ancient Egypt. This has been documented. So it's highly likely they were doing that here. And also, if you look into things like the Book of Enoch, this remarkable, very weird book that used to be part of the whole kind of Old Testament. It talks about him being taken by the watchers or the angels to different latitudes where there was very different weather and different environments, and taking cords and going to measure. And this is going back into deep antiquity, the era they were talking about here. So it's even referenced in some of the old texts, some of the old sort of sacred texts.
Who did they say was being taken?
Enoch, one of the biblical line of Noah and all this kind of stuff. And so this is pretty strange. I mean, that can't be proven, obviously, but the fact that the evidence is there with the measurements that are being found at these sites, so they must have had some understanding. Now, they could have guessed it, but that's highly unlikely. But what it seems is like there was some very advanced group of people, possibly a large group of people who were travelers as well. They weren't just located at Göbekli Tepe. They were going to different places.
Yeah.
They were taking measurements. For example, Stonehenge, they found these post holes where giant pine totem pole type objects would be placed in. Mm-hmm. They could have been up to 30 feet tall because they were like 3 feet wide, several feet deep. Mm-hmm. They're dated to 10,000 years old. And so this is weird. I mean, because Stonehenge wasn't built until 5,000 years after that, at least. So why were they marking the position of Stonehenge with these giant timber posts then, back in 10,000 years ago? It's quite weird. So I've got the impression, here we go, this is actually the post holes where what they would have looked like.
Which image?
And these are I think pretty much all the top ones there, and there's a reconstruction there as well.
Oh, these circle things?
Yeah, but they were originally, I mean, for a while, they were blobs of paint in the car park. That's all they were, because they're gone. They're just remnants of bits of charcoal at the bottom of them and things like this. But these go back 10,000 years. So these are really intriguing because it's almost like someone had gone out to different parts of the world and marked specific latitudes for measurements. And the thing about Stonehenge, it's a very important latitude when you start, if you want to understand astronomy and surveying, because it's at roughly 51 degrees, whereas Göbekli Tepe is 38 degrees north. But that latitude, what you have there is so between 51 and 52 degrees north, that measurement, if you actually measure it from 51 to 52, that is the mean polar circumference degree. So if you were to have a perfect circle, that's what that length would be of each degree, if you know what I mean. So it's a mean of the circle at that latitude, and similar things happen down at 38 degrees as well, to do with different elements of surveying. So it gets a bit intense,
Yeah.
But we're going to write all this out in our next book and kind of explain it in detail with graphics, because it's quite hard to kind of get your head around, and we're still working on it. We're still trying to work out how they could have measured the Earth nearly 12,000 years ago. Because if you think about it as well, if there was some kind of if there was this Younger Dryas, which is looking very likely there was, impact event, chaos, things, right. Everything got destroyed, whatever there was, the Ice Age was there for a while, this, that, and the other. Are they going to want to have another, these very elite, very smart people, there's probably survivors doing their thing, they're going to want to remap the Earth, really. They're going to want to work out where they are, because things have changed a bit. Flooding's happened, land masses have changed, the ice has shifted things around.
Yeah.
And so to me, there's a good case for that. I mean, it sounds we're going a bit far out here, but actually I think there's something to that for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that crazy of an idea that there's a group of people back then that maybe got some sort of warning or saw some sort of signs of a cataclysm coming, and maybe decided to find high ground, or to go to a certain spot where they knew they would be safe, or build a boat or whatever. Because I mean, the Younger Dryas wiped out, we know, like, what was it? Of the total human population, we think it was like maybe 40%.
Quite possibly, yeah. I'm not really.
And then
sure.
it hit, the biggest devastation from it was in North America, right? Because there's an asteroid that we believe that hit, or a comet that hit the North American ice sheet, like up where Canada is.
Yeah.
I think they found with some sort of satellites, they found evidence that there's a huge comet or asteroid underneath the ice sheet on the North American continent. And then that sort of blasted open the freaking ice wall that was blocking all the water, and then all the water rushed into like the western part of the United States, killed all the megafauna, took tons of rocks with it. That's why we have like giant boulders in the north Midwest that are from like way up north where Canada was. And then Africa, like, we lost all of the megafauna, the giant sloths, the saber-toothed tigers, the mammoths, but Africa still has all of its megafauna. There's still all the elephants and everything roaming all over Africa. So Africa was probably spared for the most part. So, I mean, even if, the people that were right in harm's way didn't survive, there were still tons of other places around the earth where, you would have been fine, it seems like.
There's a place in Syria that had like an airburst during the whole Younger Dryas impact kind of. It's actually, you can probably Google that Syria kind of airburst or impact.
Yes.
And actually one of the sites, I forget the exact name of it, but they actually kind of completely flattened the site, and then they rebuilt on it afterwards. And this was one of the pre-pottery Neolithic sites, but down in Syria. And so this is pretty pretty strange.
Comet airburst in Syria around 12,800 years ago led to the development of agriculture and in the region. Huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Abu Huraira. Yeah. That's the one.
Abu Huraira. Okay, I gotcha.
So that's the one. And so I think Graham's talked about this as well, Graham Hancock. And but this is, I mean, that's like unbelievable. That's super close to Gobekli Tepe. I mean, that's like a couple of 100 miles away.
Yeah.
And so it's not like it's that far away from that whole area. It's just down south from there, down along the Euphrates River. And so that, to me, is really compelling, because that is like a direct effect of the Younger Dryas, potentially, affecting people very close to Göbekli Tepe area. So it could have been in their consciousness of that happening, and it being revered in stories and things like this. And then you have people like Martin Sweatman and Graham as well. They kind of talk about the carvings on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe actually are a kind of almost like a memory of that, like a kind of monument to that, and a kind of warning about anything that may occur again in the future. And so I find that really, the fact that it was happening and the effects of it were recorded at somewhere very close to the area we're talking about as well, where things then really took off afterwards. Really, massive amounts of innovation just went ballistic. So, so were they kind of like doing things, getting together, putting their heads together and saying, well, we need to remap things, we need to kind of get some new places organized, built, and things like this. So there's certainly a case for that. The effects were known by the people in this region.
What did you think of the Graham Hancock Flint Dibble debate that they did?
I thought it was cool. Yeah.
Cool.
It was interesting. I mean, I think something needed to be done, but I don't know if it was essential. I mean, it's fine. I mean, the academics are going to kind of challenge people like Graham Hancock because he's so popular. I mean, his stuff's. I mean, I think Graham's overall.
That's the thing, that before that, no one really challenged him. No one got stood up face to face with him before that.
Oh, they did. I mean, they did. They did back in the 90s. I mean, we had this. I think it was a Panorama TV show in England. Tried to completely destroy Graham Hancock in one foul swoop.
They had him on and talked to him face to face.
No, they didn't. They just destroyed his TV series. And his book.
I'm talking about like actually face to face.
Yeah, but then the problem is I think he then ended up challenging them and suing them because they lied about things.
Graham sued him.
Yeah, so it got really messy, and so he's been challenged all along. Now it's just become, because of social media, people can see it more, and so I don't think it's changed. I think his I got a lot of time for Graham. I think what he's done over the years, he's pushing stuff out into now the mainstream, which I think is really important. He's putting Göbekli Tepe on, helping put Göbekli Tepe on the map.
Right.
The Younger Dryas hypothesis on the map. He's pushing forward, the sophistication of the ancients and things like this. And this really wasn't addressed very well before that. It was in some cases. There were books coming out in the 70s. We had Eric von Daniken and John Michel and others talking about it, but not really. So he was, to me, he's like the pioneer who pushed forward. And because I think he was hitting some truths, quite a lot of truths in his work, he's going to get challenged for that because it frustrates the archaeologists and the academics who have their own version of it, which is much more mundane and simple. He
made it way more interesting, right?
Yeah.
He turned it into something that the everyday working man could get behind and find fascinating, and with his books, right? Fingerprints of the Gods.
Oh God, in that he does tons of work on the archaeoastronomy, for instance, which fascinates me, which hadn't really been addressed before and put into a kind of popular format, where people can kind of get it and get their head around it and appreciate it. I just think, I think the debate was interesting. It came across okay. I know you had Flint on here, didn't you?
I did,
as well. Yeah. And so, but
I thought it was okay.
The frustration I've got with that whole thing. I mean, I don't want to kind of say too much about it, really. But
why not?
Well, it's because, firstly, when you got archaeology, you got like academia, you got them digging up the sites, doing their archaeological work. They're focused on what they're good at. They're really good at that, and they can do that well, and they can archive it. They can analyze, the different things, get dating and stuff like this. When it comes to interpretation, that's a whole other story. I mean, because you've got the culture that came from. You got to look at their traditions, their mythologies, their way of life, their way of thinking. So you have to go into anthropology. And I really think you need to have a multidisciplinary approach to interpreting sites. You can't rely on one group of people who are specialized in digging up things, to interpret everything correctly. And so I think this is where you got people who are experts in ancient geometry, in measurements, things like that need to come in and have a look, how they oriented the sites. Archaeoastronomers need to come in and have a look. One of the issues with Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe recently, since myself and JJ made this winter solstice discovery at Karahan Tepe, and before that, Graham was talking about it. We have Andrew Collins writing about the Cygnus northern orientation and of the structures there towards Cygnus and Deneb. But the thing is, we're kind of alternative researchers. We're independent. Things like this. So we put it out there, but it gets dismissed because we're not academics. And actually, with Karahan Tepe, you can go there yourself. You can see the actual phenomenon on the winter solstice happen. But since all this has come out, it's being put out publicly that there's no astronomy at all associated with Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe whatsoever. It's false. Even though many people have already written about it and put it out there, and they say the reason is because there were roofs on it, so therefore they never looked at the night sky, and things like this. And so you get into this kind of almost like a kind of kind of battering ram headlock kind of thing. You can't get through and actually kind of put this stuff out there. So I'm frustrated by. I want the academics to discuss discoveries made by non-academics and open it up for debate in a nice way. Why do we have to be mean to each other and be, bitching about everything? I mean, I think that needs to be addressed. I think because there's people who just focus their whole lives on archaeoastronomy. Then they want to have a look at Göbekli Tepe and they're dismissed because someone who doesn't know anything about archaeoastronomy, the academics, the archaeologists, say there isn't anything there. So you can't go in there and do the research. And so I think there's something that needs to be addressed. There needs to be a multidisciplinary opening for other researchers to officially have their say on things as well and discuss it openly. I mean, because I'd like to, we've written a kind of paper, myself and JJ, on the winter solstice sunrise alignment, but we can't get it published anywhere academically because we're not academics. And so it won't get addressed. It won't get looked at. It will be ignored. So that's the frustration we've got. We're actually going to try. We found a journal which we're going to try and get one in.
Who pays attention to those journals anyways? Just post it on YouTube. That's where everyone goes.
Well, yeah, that's what we do. We do that, whatever.
Yeah.
But, look at Martin Sweatman. He's written this. He's an academic from Edinburgh University. He's worked with Graham in the past. He comes to and speaks at our conferences. And he's written this paper. He's written several papers now about a calendar system encoded on Pillar 43 at Gobekli Tepe, and also actually at Karahan Tepe in the Pillar Shrine. The way, like what's called a lunisolar calendar, where you're kind of like counting certain aspects of it to like build up this calendar. And he got that peer reviewed and published in an academic journal. Eventually, it took him like 2 or 3 years to get it through. And now that went ballistic. That went all over the internet. It caused this sensation, really frustrated a lot of the academics and archaeologists who said, well, we weren't consulted. Well, we don't agree with that. And so he managed to get one through about the astronomy and astrology, even astrological symbols and calendars at Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. So in a way, that's opened the door for other people to now write about that. But since then, the archaeologists have said, no, none of that is true. There's no astronomy. They weren't looking at the skies since that came out a few months ago. Yeah. And so hang on a sec, but it's been published. We've made this discovery. Here's Martin Sweatman here at our conference, our Megalithomania conference. So that's my frustration with the whole kind of debate. And I just think everyone needs to be a bit nicer to each other. It's as simple as that. And actually listen to each other. Yeah. Because there's no need. I mean, the ideas are flowing. If we're a kind of advanced civilization, which we claim to be, we should be collaborating, not fighting about it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, but it's definitely not happening. You're right about that. We're more focused on fighting each other and proving each other wrong on Twitter.
Yes.
About people that lived potentially 10,000 years ago.
I know. Again,
we're not really innovating anything anymore. We're just sort of, it's almost like we're disintegrating as a species, it feels like, because of technology. Like technology is doing all the work for us now. And now we just want to figure out the next place to get our next dopamine hit. You know what I mean?
That's it. I get you. It's like with Twitter or X or whatever. Yeah. That's that to me. That is like hell. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I can't. It's just a million opinions flying around, and everyone thinks their opinion's correct, and it gets so frustrating, and no one's listening, and then everyone blocks each other, and it's like, what the hell? Where's the educated, enlightened discussion?
Right.
Why can't I go and talk to the head archaeologist at Karahan Tepe and have a discussion with him about the winter solstice alignment and actually show him it, and we talk about it and actually get it properly tested?
It takes a lot of balls to be able to publicly defend your research and your ideas, in the public square, and to risk looking like a fool in front of a lot of people, the whole world, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think people want to do that. People would just rather like leave a comment, anonymously on a social media platform.
Yeah.
And Flint did do that. I don't know if he knew the repercussions or what was going to happen. I mean, it seems like there's a huge group of people who just hate his guts.
Yeah.
That just like, they hate his they hate every fiber of his being simply because he disagrees with Graham Hancock in every way possible.
But it's the way he does it as well, isn't it?
It is the way, he definitely doesn't do it in the best not in the best way. I think he could do things differently, but look, we're all human. None of us are perfect. Do I think blocking everybody on Twitter I don't block anybody on Twitter. I've never blocked anybody on Twitter. But maybe I can't judge him for wanting to block people for calling him names or calling him a moron or whatever it is. But I think humans just like to not be wrong about shit. They like to be right about things, especially when you're like him and you've dedicated your whole life. Not only that, but like his whole family is tied up in archaeology. So it's like his dad did it for X amount of years. Now he's doing it. I feel like it's his legacy. Archaeology is his legacy. And he doesn't want to be wrong about things, and at least he had the balls to go do that and face Graham head to head. I give him that. And on the, I don't agree with him about, he's not an expert in the Egypt stuff, but I asked him about these vases and some of the stuff like with the pyramids and what their original purpose was. And he buys the conventional explanation of how they were built. He thinks that these were just done by hand with like a stick and a rock on the inside doing it like that. I think it's absurd. But that's not his expertise. I think he just sort of falls in line with academia when it comes to that. And I disagree with him on it. But one of the things I think was really compelling with Flint when I had him in here was how he broke down Atlantis and the story of Atlantis. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, I know about the whole story of it. Yeah.
Are you familiar with like his theory on it?
Not so much.
So he's actually his field of expertise, right, is perfectly in line with Atlantis. So he's actually like the perfect academic archaeologist to confirm or deny Atlantis, because his location that he specializes in is ancient Greece, and the time that he focuses on, or the part of the timeline he studies, was the time that Atlantis was supposedly there. So it's compelling. And he came in here and he broke down, we talked about Plato and Plato's writings and some of the stuff, like that's some of the biggest evidence for Atlantis existing is Plato talking about it. And, I had another guy, another classical philologist who studies ancient Greek and is very well versed in Plato. He's basically read all the philosophy of the ancient Greeks and the classical texts. Basically, it seems like Plato was a liar, a prolific liar. Some of them were called noble lies, like lies to make society better, to basically lie to the people in the society to make them conform to rules, so humanity could advance, right? So where like the philosopher kings would run society, and then below that you would have like the knights, and then like the parliament or whatever. But there was also many documented accounts, like there's also like many accounts of him actually telling like outright lies in his writings, like even about Socrates. And this is known. This is known by classicists, people that don't even like pay attention to any of this sort of Atlantis stuff or any of like the Graham Hancock stuff at all. So that was interesting. And then he also broke down like the game of telephone that was that I guess was told to Plato for his account of Atlantis, right? I guess it was like you'd have to pull it up again. I don't remember it exactly, but apparently like Plato got it from someone who got it from someone else, Solon, who apparently his grandfather was told this 1,000 years before he ever wrote, before it was ever told by anyone else. And then it was told to that person by some Egyptian priest 1,000 years before that, but there was no text or anything. It was just told, right? So it's like this is like thousands and thousands and thousands of years of games of telephone, right? Before it was ever allegedly written down, and it was only allegedly written down. It was never actually written down. And then 1,000 years after that, Plato wrote it down.
Okay.
So it's like, and then on top of that, Plato is synonymous for telling fake stories.
Yeah.
Right? He's telling, like, have you ever heard of his allegory of the cave?
No.
The Plato's allegory of the cave is basically, the idea of these people in this cave and people behind them playing shadows on the wall, right? And these people think that the shadows are reality. And then eventually someone finds his way out of the cave and goes, oh my God, there's this whole new world. And he wants to tell everyone in the cave, but they're like, no, leave us alone. This is our world. We're living in this. Like, we don't want to hear your theories about whatever else. Like, they're comfortable in their world. And it was a created story of like basically how a society can be tricked and fooled and to thinking reality is something that it's not. And he's basically saying what Flint made the case for was that Atlantis was the same thing as Plato's cave.
Okay. Oh, and that's interesting.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, no,
it really was fascinating. And then he went into some of the archaeological evidence to how Atlantis wasn't an actual real place. It was a hypothetical place that Plato wrote about.
Yeah. No.
And I know some other people have other evidence for Atlantis that completely doesn't rely on Plato, which I believe we talked about. But anyways, that was he made a very compelling case when he came in here about Atlantis, and yeah.
Yeah, no, my co-author Jim Vieira, he's Mr. Atlantis. He's
is he?
Yeah. Talk to him. He'll love it. I mean, I'm not a big Atlantis fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really. I'm not sure about anything about it. I mean, I'm very aware of it. There's more books on Atlantis than any other subject on the planet. So I've read a few of them for sure. But if there's anything Atlantean, in my opinion, then it's more of a. It's not a landmass. It's not a lost continent, with crystal technology or whatever people say it was. To me, it's more of a kind of cultural, like a civilization's kind of focus. It's like it may be a kind of lost, forgotten, distant memory of just an advanced culture, possibly the Gobekli Tepe people even. It could even be that, because they were quite advanced. They were traveling around, they were measuring things, they were doing this and that. And so, maybe it's more like that than it is an actual place. That's just my version, possibility. But I don't mention the A word in any of my
the A word
of my writings.
Yeah. I think Plato was actually writing about like what a hypothetical war would look like between Athens and this place called Atlantis. And they were basically like he was trying to like simulate some sort of scenario, some sort of like, I guess you could call it a war game scenario on like what would happen to society if we got into a war with a place like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like as far as people getting back to, like conventional archaeologists and Graham Hancock, I can totally understand somebody who spent their whole life doing this stuff, like eating the gruel in archaeology, not doing a lot of the boring shit too, along with the fun shit. Can see someone like Graham Hancock come along, go on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then be selling millions of books, making all this money, becoming a worldwide celebrity, and getting all this attention. And they're like, motherfucker, I've been doing this my whole life, sludging through the mud. I haven't written any books. I haven't made a fucking dime. I've just been sitting in class, teaching people and, traveling to all these places, but nobody gives me credit for any of it. Instead of this schmuck, this Graham Hancock guy gets to go write all this stuff. I'm going to go find every hole I can possibly find in everything he's ever written. Like, I understand that point of view.
I can, I get that kind of perspective. You got to look at all different perspectives on these things. Yeah, for sure. But maybe he's
not saying it's a good thing to do. I don't think it's a good thing to do, but I can get, it's human nature.
But it is, but it doesn't look good for archaeology when you've got someone trying to call someone else out on, and then getting personal, and then getting attacked. This whole racism agenda that's behind it is like really weird.
Yeah, and I totally agree.
So that stuff, I mean, you don't do that.
Right.
You don't do that. You're an adult. You don't do things like that. You just you focus on the actual research, not what some other author wrote 150 years ago that referenced once.
What did he say? His ideas are based on white supremacy or something like that?
No, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I mean, it's sad, and it makes them look foolish, in my opinion, when they say things like that, because it isn't. It just isn't. I mean, he's you read Fingerprints of the Gods. I don't think they've read his books. I've got to be honest.
I think
with
Graham has. No, not Graham. I think Flint has. Flint's read it.
I'm not sure. I mean, if you'd actually read his books. There's no hint of that. It's kind of absurd, in my opinion. It doesn't make any sense to bring the racist card into it at all. I mean, it's absurd. I think it's a misinterpretation, or he's quoted people that said stuff in their other works or something like this. It's weird, but the point is that maybe Flint should write a best-selling book. Then he'll be up there with Graham.
Well, he's got a YouTube channel now.
There you go.
He's doing podcasts.
Yeah. Let's get a Netflix show, write a million.
Get a Netflix show.
Book.
Yeah. Also, the thing that somebody sent Netflix like a open letter about the first season of Graham's show.
Yeah.
Basically saying that they should recategorize the show as like science fiction or something.
Yeah, I know. That's weird as well.
Can you find the letter that was written to Netflix for the first season of Ancient Apocalypse? From and who it was from. Society for American
That's
Archaeology sent the letter to Netflix, and ITN Productions about the Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse. The Society for American Archaeology requested that Netflix reclassify the series as science fiction instead of a documentary or docu-series.
Yes. So I was reading up on this recently, actually.
We should find out who's behind this Society for American Archaeology.
Yeah.
I wonder who funds them and who, like, what would their incentive be?
Well, initially they were founded to bridge a gap between what archaeology was doing and what amateurs were doing when they were writing and presenting about archaeology. And it was all very polite when it was set up. It was all very neat and tidy. It's very polite. Now everyone else is a pseudo-archaeologist. They kind of dismiss them and call them, names and things like that. But when it was set up, apparently it was all very polite, and that they wanted to genuinely connect with, bringing archaeology and amateur work into the same kind of mix. That's actually, weirdly, that's one of kind of like why we set up Megalithomania, our conference back in 2006, is because
Steve, you're not going to find it on the website. You're going to have to do some digging and find out who's the biggest funder behind it.
There's actually an article called really horrible. It's actually Dan D. Dunker. He posted this video last night.
Who?
Dan D. Dunking. He kind of debunks the academics and the skeptics, but there's a paper called Apocalypse Not, which they put out about a year or so ago, which is kind of strange. But yeah, so we set up Megalithomania to bridge the gap between academia, archaeologists, and the alternative, and create a stage for it, because we felt it was important back in 2006. And it's still to me, there's just too much battling. People need to kind of lighten up, actually talk to each other. And I'm sure we'll get through and make some amazing breakthroughs.
Keep scrolling down. Keep going. 6,000 members, represents professional, avocational.
Board of directors.
Yeah, click on board of directors. Let's see what that says. See if George Soros is on here. Sandwise. Daniel Sandwise. He's the president. He's been the president. 2025. What?
Doesn't make sense.
2027? What is this?
I don't understand that. Is that when their tenure ends?
Are these people from the future?
You want to go to committees?
Are these time traveling archaeologists?
All volunteers.
What about on the left there, committees and task forces? I think that's the one you're going to find it.
Task forces.
A task force.
There'll be a pseudo-archaeology task force, I'm sure. Yeah, it's not really in there, is it? But no, I think it's like John Hoops, Carl Fegans, and your friend Flint Dibble and things like that. I think people they wrote this paper called Archeology Not that Dan posted last night in a video, and
it just must piss them off that Graham, is getting all this crazy attention and is pushing these theories, and they feel like it's an attack on their tribe, I guess.
Yeah. I guess it is, but I think a lot of what. But the problem is, a lot of what Graham says is true. It's good. It's quality research. He's an exceptional researcher, and I think people overlook that. And he's an investigative journalist. He's superb at it. I mean, the stuff he's uncovered, which no one had ever seen before, is quite remarkable. So I think you got to look at that, from that perspective as well, and that gets ignored. All his good, his really thorough, research, which frustrates me because I know I've read all his books. I know what he's talking about. So, but I think there's a lot of other people who thankfully are getting their books out. They're publishing. They're getting videos out. They're doing TV shows, and a lot of this alternative information is getting out there. I mean, I'm actually involved in Ancient Aliens quite a lot, History Channel. Now, a lot of people dismiss that, but I find what it's done, is, and I never talk about aliens, I'm talking about ancient mysteries and things like that. But what I find it's done is a bit like Ancient Apocalypse now has, is that it's pushed out these ancient sites like Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, all these, Namadol, all these other sites around the world, and put them into the mainstream television, which is actually, and some really good theories which are really valid are getting out there from alternative researchers. Now, I don't necessarily agree with lots of the alien or UFO stuff. It's not really my speciality. But the fact is, they focus a lot on ancient sites and ancient and good and interesting theories and archaeoastronomy. And
aliens do?
No, the show does.
The show does. Right.
And so I think it's like it's actually
they're basically essentially like alienating the gaps, right? Like with the shit we don't understand from the past, like the Great Pyramids. Like humans couldn't have done it. It was too long ago. It must have been aliens.
Yeah. That is a general. That's a general way.
Very general.
It's
way.
looked at.
Yeah.
But
right.
I mean. It's because of the high technology, the kind of the vases.
Right, of course.
It's almost like computer
God or aliens.
And so you have to kind of, it's a way of popularizing it using the aliens, but at the same time,
it's a great title, Ancient Aliens.
It's getting information like about about this high technology into the public domain in a mainstream way, which I think is great. It needs to be done. So it's allowing our alternative researchers and authors to get their information and theories out in that world. And I think that frustrates a lot of the academics in this society and things like that. Same as same way Graham Hancock's upset them as well. But it's all good. I mean, I think it's just a case of I just think things need to change. And like I say, the reason we set up a conference was to bridge this gap and put all these people on the same stage, so we can have a discussion about it and not dismiss each other and not ignore people's discoveries. Actually discuss them. And if the discovery gets proven to be wrong, we can let it go then. But you got to discuss it and work it out. But I think the archaeoastronomy definitely needs to be addressed, especially at sites like Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe.
Have you ever heard of Jeffrey Drum?
Yes, I have.
The Land of Chem?
Yes, yeah.
What do you make of his theories?
Yeah, I've had a look at some of it actually. Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, you go into the red pyramid. Yeah, it stinks of ammonia.
Right.
That is weird. There's no way that is just bird poop. Stinking that place.
Poop,
no bat
way.
poop. No,
right.
it's like, this is weird. That is a weird kind of chemical smell in that place. But yeah, no, I've looked at some of his stuff. It's pretty cool. I know you had him on here once, didn't you, as well? Yeah. So I mean, you look at
I think that's probably one of my favorite theories on the pyramids and what they were doing in Egypt is the chemical manufacturing stuff.
Yeah.
I think it makes so much sense.
And you could shape. What is that? How you shape the stones then? Sort of cut them easily using chemicals.
Yeah, for metallurgy, they would have used those chemicals for metal to create metallurgy. And then also for fertilizer, right? And the crops. That's what he was saying, right, Steve? They were using that to
help fertilizer stuff. Yeah.
Fertilizer, agriculture.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really answer the question of how did they lift those giant blocks and stuff, and how did they move those giant blocks. But when you get into the Serapeum and you see those giant boxes in there that have those scoops that are taken out of them, he makes a case to where you could use some of these chemicals to do that, to soften that, and to turn it into a soft ice cream and scoop it out.
Yeah, you got a lot of scoop marks there in the stone as well. You get that in
and if you could use some of these chemicals to soften these stones, it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with granite and diorite and things like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Limestone's fairly, workable, but
I would love to see Jeffrey Drum and Chris Dunn collaborate on something.
Well, because Chris Dunn in his book, the Giza Power Plant, he talked about chemicals.
Yeah,
he talked about chemicals
would go into the Queen's Chamber down one of the shafts. It would be I forget what chemical it was. Hydrogen, liquid hydrogen or something.
Yeah,
that would go down one of the the left hand shaft into the Queen's Chamber. It would create the chemical reaction in the Queen's Chamber. Go out there up the Grand Gallery and do something in the King's Chamber where the microwave. Those waveguides that were coming out of the King's Chamber would combine with the hydrogen in there and do something that created free energy, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
But and he also thought that the chemicals were being poured into the ground outside of the Great Pyramid, and then they were being somehow pushed up into the shafts that went down into the Queen's Chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty epic, really. I mean, that's another level of technology.
What a fucking crazy thought experiment that book is, the Giza Power Plant. Holy shit.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. He's got a new one out as well. He probably discussed
Tesla Connection.
Yeah.
And that's basically about, that's the idea that there was this hammering device that was in the subterranean chamber of the pyramid that would hammer the ground underneath the pyramid, deep underneath the pyramid. I forget how exactly deep it is, but it would basically so the foundation that the pyramid sits on, that part of the Giza plateau is very, I guess, like seismically active. And when you pound the ground, when you hit it with like a hydraulic hammer underneath the pyramid, it creates a little mini earthquake. And when the ground does that, it creates these electrons that flow through the Earth's surface.
Yes.
And he was saying that these electrons somehow interact with the pyramid to create this power that the thing creates.
Yeah, I think he wrote about magnetism as well, and things like natural magnetism in the Earth as well can be manipulated and things like this.
Yeah, and there's the earthquake lights.
Yeah.
There's Marfa, Texas, where there's like famous place for all these earthquake lights that would come up.
Where the rocks kind of rubbing together deep under the ground. I mean, just coming back to Göbekli Tepe, in Göbekli Tepe, in Enclosure D, something was published in the mid-2000s, and it was by Pablo de Bertolis of Trieste University. And he basically did some acoustic research inside Enclosure D, which has this very interesting geometry. It's kind of elliptical, but it's also got this very special geometry we looked at. And he also did, while he was there, and this is when Klaus Schmidt was the head archaeologist, they found within it a spiraling magnetic anomaly coming up out of the ground in between the two central T-pillars, and he freaked out. So he went around all the different angles and got the same thing from all the different angles to prove his point.
Wow.
And so they were building on top of a magnetic anomaly, which we know can affect consciousness. We know. So so the reason they chose the little odd, it's really kind of bizarre location when you look at like the middle of nowhere up on these kind of hills, in these stony hills. It makes you question what they must have recognized some kind of special quality about it to choose that site. But also, if you know the work of John Burke, who wrote Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty, he did a whole book, basically like 10 or 15 years of research, going around to other ancient sites with magnetometers, picking, working out where the magnetism was the strongest. There was anomalies, and he eventually concluded that these were the places where the ancient people would place their seeds and grains, and that this magnetism and telluric currents would charge it up. And so, and he did tests in labs and everything as well. And when you then go and plant the seeds and grains, that you get a much higher yield, higher quality crop, frost resistant and things like this.
Wow.
This was all published. It's all like scientifically documented, and it's been proven by other people doing tests as well. So many of these sites, these ancient sites, even the pyramids, what they were doing, they were creating, like, as you mentioned, this fertilizing kind of energy to enhance their agriculture.
Right.
And if you go back to Göbekli Tepe, right, so this was 9,600 BC. They were doing that here. So I postulate, hypothesize, speculate, whatever you want to call it, that it's known that agriculture developed in that immediate area within 200 years of Göbekli Tepe being built. And the agricultural revolution went boom, it started happening. People were growing food everywhere, bringing their seeds around, sharing them, planting them, getting good yields and things like this. It's a very fertile kind of area at the time. And so did they have some kind of understanding of how to enhance their seeds and grains at Göbekli Tepe to then go and do this effectively? So that's another thing we're looking into now, but hard to prove, can't find much data to back it up. But the fact is there is a major spiraling magnetic anomaly right at the heart of the main enclosure at Göbekli Tepe. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
And who found this?
This was Pablo de Bertolis of Trieste University. And it's in a paper, it's published. You can see it online.
Can you find it, Steve?
Yeah, we mentioned it in our little book. We're going to do a big thing about it in the next book, for sure, because we think it's really intriguing. And the other problem, I want to get inside these sites. So I'm reaching out to the archaeologists here. Let me in the sites with a magnetometer. Let's see what else we've got, because if that's really interesting, and it's scientific. It's not like we're just making it up. This was published.
How do you spell his name? What about just
put acoustics, Pablo Turbatolis, yeah.
Acoustics.
That might come up. But yeah, so this is just one of the things. I mean, because there are definitely acoustics occurring at these sites. This is something Andrew Collins is a a good friend of mine, he's done a lot of research on the fact that these are kind of elliptical in shape. So these are very specific acoustic properties when you have elliptical enclosures and closed structures, going around surrounding you. And so he found out that, this guy here, Pablo de Bertollis, that you might want to look at, go back to my lecture, because it's actually in that. It might be easier. It might be
Is
under
it this one right here?
No, it's not that. No.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's there. It's definitely online. I mean, I downloaded.
Are there any other places that they found these besides the Göbekli Tepe?
Oh, all over the world. Loads of sites. Loads of British stone circles.
Wow.
Even the mound culture sites of America. There's things that were found at the pyramids to do with ions. I think you were mentioning that earlier, like the ions being collected. Even the stone chambers of New England.
Electrons. Yeah.
and,
they called it a solid state electron harvester.
If you can get hold of a copy of John Burke's book, Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty, it's an absolute superb piece
Seed
of work.
of Knowledge?
Stone of Plenty, yeah.
Okay.
Seed of Knowledge. He died, unfortunately, and the book went out of print, but you can get copies of it. But it's mind-blowing. This is it here. It's unbelievable. This was before Göbekli Tepe, so he didn't mention it in there, but his research can be applied,
Right.
I think, to that area very much so. Because you've got earthquake zones as well. You mentioned like creating this earthquake kind of thing at the pyramid. Right, you've got a whole... when the earthquake happened a couple of years ago, it was felt at Göbekli Tepe. Very slightly, but it was felt there.
Yeah,
in fact,
that earthquake was devastating.
in fact, in Shanlarfa, the nearest city to Göbekli Tepe, something fell off this bell tower or something, because it shook it slightly. The main part was in Gaziantep, which is 100 miles away or so.
Yeah.
And it was also felt at Karahan Tepe as well. So some people are now, I'm speculating as well, based upon his work, that just even the subtle earthquake kind of zones, you can, where you got, stone rubbing together deep under the ground with these balls of light, that could also be enhanced and manipulated to enhance seeds and grains, according to John Burke.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you're getting all this electric energy coming up, things like this electric charge. And I find that really intriguing. And I think
that's fascinating.
It fits in with Chris Dunn's theories as well, very much so. On the pyramid.
Wow.
So it's all happening. I mean,
Cool.
and this is obviously long before the pyramids, technically, officially.
Right.
Even though people say they're
who knows how old they are.
Yeah. People say they're much older. And but there's other innovations. I could just waffle on about this. There's other innovations that have been recorded in southeast Turkey, which one of them is air conditioning. The first ever air conditioning, which I hugely appreciate, was discovered at a site called Navali Chori. So what happened here is that this was about 8,300 BC, so it was 1,000 so years after Göbekli Tepe. It's now being flooded, the whole area's gone, but this was researched by Harold Hauptmann, Klaus Schmidt and others back in the 1980s, going into the 90s. And they found not only these sort of square enclosures there with the terrazzo floor and these amazing statues, but they also found some of the live-in structures where people lived. Some of them were like 16 meters long or 40 feet long and so forth. But what they found it was next to what's called the Kantara stream, which was a tributary of the Euphrates River, one of the rivers of paradise of the Bible. And they found that there were channels carved out under this house throughout, all the way along it, all these different channels, and it would allow, with little sluice gates and things like this, very cold water to come in from the stream on hot days, and let them in there. Then they would open up the floor part, and the cool air would cool down the environment they're in, so they could live comfortably in very hot weather.
No way.
Yeah, it's very classy. And another site called Cheanu, which is further north near Diyarbakir, where they possibly did these sacrifices, they found underfloor of the domestic structures, underfloor channels carved out between them, but this was for cool air to be blown, to flow in and out from. So, and then they would have areas where they come up into the structure. So that one was air.
So the water would cool the air?
Well, in Navali Churi, there's no evidence for the water going through the ones at Cheanu, but the cool air they think they may have been used for storage, but the Navali Churi one's fascinating.
Yeah.
Little details like that are just mentioned in the occasional academic text from 1983. And to me, it's like, oh my God. That is like, innovation heaven. I mean, that is so useful as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're boiling to death, like 100-degree heat and things like this. So little things like that really get me. Plus, you got the fact that they found calcium oxalate in some of the kind of big stone bowls at Gobekli Tepe, which is a byproduct of brewing beer. So they were brewing very low alcohol beer. This is just from probably accidental fermentation of barley and other substances, but they had an alcoholic beverage. It was more like a gruel, and it probably wasn't very tasty. It's probably like you have to chew on it. And but still, they had alcohol back then, and they were possibly brewing it back then. They found that at Natufian sites as well. There's even evidence up in a site called Kortik Tepe, which is actually a bit older than Göbekli Tepe. That's further northeast. There's a whole series of sites that along the Tigris River, which is a couple of 100 miles, 300 miles to the northeast. But they found possible evidence of wine production going back again to about 10,000 years ago, maybe even older, maybe 11,000, 12,000. And there's actually someone's written a book about early kind of alcohol.
Dionysus, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's Kortik, Kortik, if you want to, Kortik. And it might not be on here. This was mentioned briefly in one paper or one book, so they might not mention the wine thing. But then it was proven.
What is that big thing? That like tea cut out of the ground right there?
That's probably the site. I mean, and also you can see there, the kind of one on the top left there. That is some of the stonework from Kortik Tepe.
Oh, wow.
So this is before Göbekli Tepe, right?
Wild.
So it's about the size of your hand. It's not big, but it's 3D abstract relief carving. So this could be where the ideas of all the abstract 3D relief carving came from before Göbekli Tepe. So there's
Go back to that big T shape that was cut out of that floor. Right there on the left. What the hell's that? That's Kortik Tepe?
I don't know. I think that's Hallam Semi actually. But I think that's that's the trench they've cut out.
That's where they cut the T-pillar out?
No. I think that's just the trench, the shape of the trench. I don't know. Maybe it's Kortik Tepe.
Wow.
Oh yeah, because you can see some of the small circular kind of areas which they have there. This is pretty much almost being kind of semi-flooded nowadays, unfortunately.
So this is just a huge chunk of bedrock that's just like chilling there, and they were
no. I think this is covered in mud. I think Kortik Tepe has lots of these small circular, they say domestic structures.
Okay, I see.
But in this area, this is where they think they found this part of the world is where the first ever wine was produced, was in Turkey. It was eastern Turkey, southeast Turkey, and so you got beer, you got wine being produced. And one of the other things that's being talked about a lot, which we're going to get into in our book, I know Graham Hancock's well into this, is the psychedelic use in southeast Turkey, because there's evidence at Rachefet Cave, I think it's called, in Israel, where they found evidence of sort of alcohol production there, this is 14,000 years old, this site, by the way. It's even older. And they found possibly ergot as well from, so they're getting ergot kind of mold growing on the old kind of beer gruel, whatever it is, or the grains. And that could have been happening at Göbekli Tepe, because if they were brewing stuff there. And so they may have been accidentally taking a whole load of LSD with their beer gruel and tripping the light. Fantastic. Yeah. And to me, it's a logical kind of reality to that, because you look at the abstract nature of some of the stonework at
what the fuck is that, dude? That's the creepiest shit I've ever seen. What, Ratfak?
Yeah, you spelled that
High
wrong.
Priest of Rainbow.
I totally spelled it wrong.
Jesus.
Yeah, and look what comes up. Oh my god,
that's a fucking nightmare, dude. Turn that off.
That's what you see if you have too much ergot, probably.
Yeah, right. Oh my god.
And anyway, but so you got so the little innovations, some of them could have been accidental. They could have accidentally discovered powerful psychedelics growing on their beer,
growing on their food or their wheat or their beer or whatever.
Because ergot is what Albert Hoffman, synthesized LSD from. It's unbelievable. Right. And there's also mushroom symbolism throughout this area. Terence McKenna wrote about possible mushroom symbolism, possible use of cannabis at Çatalhöyük, which was the famous first city in the world for a long time, until Göbekli Tepe's turned up. That's further west in Turkey. It dates to around
Where's that at?
7000 BC. It's near Konya. It's in sort of central kind of Turkey.
Okay.
So there's quite possibly they were really going full shamanic at this time. I think there's a strong case for that, and that could explain why everything's kicked off, because they made these possible accidental discoveries that kind of blew their minds and inspired them in profound ways.
Yeah.
Plus, there was definitely cattle there. We know that there's aurochs, different kind of bovines in that area. So in this part of the world, when you've got dung of these beasts, that's where psilocybin grows. So different strains of it, and so there's lots of little possibilities like that, which really kind of intrigue me, because I'm always trying to work out, why did they do this? What gave them the incentive to do this? It just seems to, there's no clear reason. I mean, maybe it was the end of the Younger Dryas, things were getting better, but is that really enough reason to create these crazy abstract art carved out of stone in these temples and things like this? So I think there's more to it than meets the eye when you come to that kind of when you're trying to understand what they were doing.
Yeah, I think so too, man. There's definitely a lot of evidence for drug use throughout history, with every civilization. And you never know. You never know how much that stuff inspired everything they did. You know, could it inspire everything? I mean, obviously they didn't have a foundational understanding of chemicals like we do, and how the human body works and processes different alkaloids and chemicals and all that stuff. So eating a mushroom and then seeing God, you've got to think that's something, you know, especially if you're living 12,000 BC, you're going to have a way different experience than someone's going to have now, when we actually know what the fuck's going on inside our minds.
Yeah. And the geometrical nature as well. You see lots of geometry on these things, you know, and things like that. You see serpents carved everywhere as well. You see that kind of thing. You see combinations of human and animal, which you find a lot at these sites, you know, things like this.
Right.
And, you know, and also just the kind of, you know, inspiration for, like, you know, seeing patterns and movements in the stars, you know, if you get inspired by that through these different, you know, substances, that could be why they were getting into the astronomy and the solstices and laying out things in a certain way, certain geometrical forms and things like that, because, you know, who knows, but it's just a, you know, a bit of speculation going on here right now, but but it's worth discussing when you're trying to understand these people.
One day we're going to figure out backwards time travel, and we're going to go back there and see exactly what all these people are doing, so people won't be able to fight over it anymore. We'll know exactly what the fuck was going on.
That would help, yeah.
And we're going to figure out that people from the future went back and built the pyramids just to confuse the fuck out of all of us that are caught in between.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, or maybe it was built by time travelers. You know?
Yeah, maybe it's built by people who are way later than we even exist.
Yeah, I mean, they're abstract as well. I mean, the pyramids, man, they're proper abstract art. They're like they're like the ultimate abstract art installation. And, and I see like these, like Göbekli Tepe, I see them like art installations as well. They're not just temples. They're not just like places where people lived,
right?
You know, they're not just where they studied the stars and the sun and the moon. They're almost like, it feels like there's a kind of art, you know. And the thing about the artwork there, the stonework, the artwork, is that it didn't change for 1,500 years at least. It stayed the same style spec, the same, almost like the same principles of artwork and design and layout, T-pillars with hands.
Right.
Everything stayed the same. It barely changed. Right. That's what I find that really interesting, that they came up with.
It's also similar with the giant heads on Easter Island. They have those little hands carved into the side of them, similar to the Göbekli Tepe T-pillars.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that blows my mind. Possible connections with these other cultures as well, which people have talked about a lot. But I just think that it's often overlooked, the artistic nature. And one of the things that was discovered, you might, if you want to bring this up, you can. This is the boar statue from Göbekli Tepe. This giant boar statue.
Boar?
Yeah, it's a life-size boar statue, like the kind of beast of the area. That was found last year at Göbekli Tepe in Enclosure D. There it is. And the thing about this, talking about artworks, this had red, white,
you blow that up,
and black pigments on it. So they found paint all over it. And this has then opened up the whole kind of question, was this whole site painted? Was it?
Right.
It wasn't just stone,
Right.
And so that really gets me, because it's like, especially red, black, and white. They're the three colors found here predominantly.
Right.
So the whole site could have been painted red, black, and white. It could have had other colors, a couple of other colors as well. That would have looked very different. But he's holding like a head in his hand as well, in his hoofs or whatever you call them. And you can still see the red pigment in his mouth.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I mean, that's like, big. It's like the size of this table.
Is that how big that thing is? Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. And everything's much bigger when you go there. You realize the scale of this.
What is the current plan with Gobekli Tepe? They plan to keep digging down to try to find more? And what is plans, if any, to excavate more of these mounds where they found Gobekli Tepe?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we'll start at Gobekli Tepe. Yeah. So there's been a big drama going on about that. People are claiming it's, it's Jimmy Corsetti. He's been talking about this. There's saying they've halted excavations there. Now, so they've certainly slowed down since the whole COVID time for sure. But I've been there. I go there twice a year. We do take groups out there and stuff, and they're constantly doing things. There's always stuff happening. They're always cleaning up, sorting things out. The issue with Gobekli Tepe is that it's buried so deep.
Right.
It's a huge amount, like 30 feet of rubble and stone and dirt they've got to carefully move out of the way of each stone. So I can understand why it's a bit slow. It makes sense because they've got to do it carefully. Right. If they do one little bit of damage, they're in trouble. And so then they have to get down to the bedrock. They have to clean it all up. They have to preserve things, fix things, glue things back together in some cases.
How much deeper do you think it is?
Well, I think they've reached the bedrock in the main the area they're excavating in the southeast.
So it's not deeper.
But there's there's like 90% of it has barely been touched, which could be just as deep. So a huge amount of work needs to be done.
Wow.
But they are working on it. They found some new carvings in enclosure B. They found this last year. This had a whole load of dirt just above the head of that bore.
Wow.
For decades. Yeah, for decades. They only just found this because they just cleared away some dirt.
Wow.
And so that really kind of gets me.
Cool.
And so they are working away slowly. A new bit of information has just come out from the head of the whole kind of Tastepala kind of cult, people that are organising it, and they're saying that they are now going to remove some trees because some trees have been planted up there controversially by the landowners, which was done partly to it gives them more value on their own property, but they're going to remove some trees and start excavating new areas. This is actually being announced, but I don't know if it's been publicly announced, but we saw the Turkish announcement of it. So more is going to start to be done for sure. And I think they're being kind of pressured into it a little bit from the general public because of, Jimmy's been pushing, that they're not doing enough. And in a way, they're not. They really could do a lot more. I mean, I really want to see the whole place excavated. Yeah. But they're saying they're not going to do it. They're going to leave it for future generations. Wow. But luckily, Karahan Tepe, they're going for it. It's like, they're blasting through it. Good. They're not messing around. They got like loads of people up there working on it for like half the year pretty much. I think they extended the dig all the way into until November.
They removed it?
Yeah, they put it in the museum. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, they had. I think they kind of had to really keep it safe because they're excavating all around it. They don't want to
look at the toucan. You see that little toucan?
Oh, there's all sorts in that museum. It's crazy. Oh yeah, that's supposed to be a vulture.
Oh, a vulture
from Karahan Tepe. That was one of the new discoveries.
That makes more sense.
That's about 2.5 feet tall, and but yeah. So now they're working on Karahan Tepe, which is insane, amazing place, and they're also now working. Focused on that part, yeah. And
these guys got short little stubby chodes. I wonder what that's about. Why are they showing their dicks?
Well, we think it's fertility. We think it's
fertility.
There's fertility rites going on here. Myself and JJ have been working on that as a kind of possibility because it fits in with other traditions from other cultures.
Are you familiar with Mark John Allegro?
Yes, I am. Yeah. The sacred mushroom and the cross.
Yeah.
I'm aware of his work very much. So yeah, I've read all that.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean that fits
in. He thinks Jesus Christ was a psychedelic mushroom.
Yeah, I mean this fits in. This weirdly fits in with a lot of this kind of era stuff, in my opinion. That a lot of the symbolism and mythologies come from that kind of psychedelic kind of inspirations. But other sites are being excavated. There's one really interesting one called Sayburch, which is Sayburc with a little thing on the C. You might want to check that out. And that is a fascinating site. Yeah, and you can see like any of the images there. I've probably got one of mine up there somewhere. And this is a whole thing going on. This is like the second part of the excavation.
So they're probably getting ready to build a neighborhood here or something like that. And the archaeologists had to come out and survey it, and they found this.
Well, the thing about this is that most of the site is buried under a village. They've actually demolished one of the houses.
Wow.
Yeah, if you go on the one on the left there, you see that's like indoors. On the left, not that bit, on the panel there with a 3D. Again, he's holding his phallus as well.
Right.
And
click on them.
Yeah, click on one of them, and so that you can see that's under a structure, that's under a house, but that house is being removed now. This is all open. You know, we went there recently, and they've removed the entire house from it.
It looks like some sort of like wild beast attacking somebody.
On the left, you got an auroch. You got a guy jumping, holding something in his hand. Then you got two leopards.
Oh, look at the leopard eating the guy, or getting ready to
trying to go for the guy.
Go for the guy who's having a wank.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's a polite way of putting it. Yeah. But this is like full of symbolism. The archaeologists claim this is what's called a narrative scene, where there's a different process of like kind of teaching almost going on here. I think it's astronomical. I think it's like, you know, Taurus, you got Orion the hunter, you got leopards, which could be Leo, and things like this. Yeah. There's a lot of this kind of symbolism seems to match what's, you know, constellations and other such things. And this is all carved out of bedrock, like we find Karahan Tepe. Wow. So there's a huge amount going on here. There's even an underground area here as well, which you can actually go inside and deep under, you know, it's almost like Derinkuyu, like a sort of small section of an underground city. And they found all sorts of things here. So this is completely carved out of bedrock, this whole thing. It's wild. It's incredible. And they're going to hopefully excavate the whole thing over the next couple of years. There's more sites. There's other sites like Yandal-Hoyak, which is going to be proved to be bigger than Göbekli Tepe. There's a site called Çakmak Tepe, which is older than Göbekli Tepe. All these little sites are east of, pretty much, I think, just west of Göbekli Tepe and Şanlıurfa. And there's like 12 official Tas-Tepeler sites, but really there are probably 38, people are saying now. So there's all sorts of different there's different stuff coming, and it's all very similar. It's all got the same design. Right. It's almost like the same artist, but these stretch over 1,500, 2,000 years.
Yeah.
But they're all unique as well. They're all unique, but they've all got the same style. A bit like in Egypt, you know, you get the same kind of look. In the Mayan stuff, you get the same look, but it goes through multiple different sites and eras. Yeah. And that's happening in this part of the world as well. It's a very specific design spec. I mean, it must be some genius level people coming up with the first batch of the designs at like Göbekli Tepe and other places that then kind of spread through this whole area. And why they would build so many sites in such a kind of relatively small area is baffling. Here on the one on the left there, you got on the bottom left, you got like these small enclosures are being found with like, they're only like 15 feet wide or less.
Right.
With like 7 or 8 pillars, T-pillars around the edge, with one in the middle. You've got like, the skeletons were found at this place as well, actually. Yeah. They found a whole bunch of skeletons here recently. Kind of, there's no official like elaborate burials of this culture. Right. It hasn't been found yet anyway. They found some bones, some skeletons in various places. They found actually skulls in Göbekli Tepe that have been kind of worked, like trepanned, and had holes cut through them and things like this, and be removed from the spine and things like this.
I think I remember the Snake Bros were showing me that stuff.
Yeah, so that's weird. I mean, basically you've got what could be a skull cult, they call it. You know? Yeah. You get the same kind of thing. You get caches of skulls at Cheano as well, another site. But yeah, so there's a whole. I mean, it's all happening. I mean, this is it. This is the time of like discovery of this culture. This is happening now. You can go there, you can see it being excavated. It's like going back a few hundred years into like Egypt, where stuff was still covered up by sand, or the jungles of Guatemala, flying into Tikal, the Mayan temples as you hack through.
Right.
This is happening now in this rocky landscape of southeast Turkey. This is like the time of discovery.
This is cool. This is cool stuff, man. And I think it's a great thing that Graham's getting such much more wide attention, getting another season of his show on Netflix. With and Keanu Reeves likes it too. That's fun.
Yes.
And it's making it more available to people, and it's getting more people interested into it, which will hopefully bring in more funding to stuff like this, and digging up and finding more sites and making more discoveries, and maybe even pushing back the timeline farther than we've imagined up till now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's cool shit, man. Where can people find your YouTube channel and find your books and all the stuff that you're doing?
Sure, yeah, they can just search for me, Hugh Newman. They can go to megalithomania.co.uk. They can, we've got a YouTube channel. We've got a couple of 100,000 subscribers. It's just Megalithomania UK. And yeah, we have a whole bunch of, I've just recently published a video about Jericho. Again, that's a very cool site.
Oh yeah.
That's actually got a summer solstice sunset alignment as well, dating back to 8,300 BC, which is pretty epic. And yeah, we have a whole bunch of, lectures. We run conferences. We've got the Origins conference we do in November in England, in Wiltshire. We do the big Megalithomania thing in conference in May. If people want to come over and hang out, that's the one. That's the one we've got coming up. And we've got some really cool speakers. But it's a whole. We're like a project. We do conferences. We do tours. To, places like Gobekli Tepe and all that. We want to get out there constantly to check what's going on. It's great to show people around, because they're like, whoa, what the hell is this? And so so we're kind of busy. We're doing a lot of things, but they can just check out Hugh Newman or Megalithomania.
Beautiful.
All right.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All the way over here in the U.S. Going home back to the UK tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow night. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. Again, I really appreciate it, and everything's linked below, folks. Good night.